Hi, this is Janet Phillips with the Daily Digi, and I'm here today to share a simple and yet really cool tutorial on using displacement maps. Now, rather than try to get all technical and explain to you exactly what a displacement map is, I think it'd be easier just to show you what it does, and then I think you'll start to get it. First, I want to show you this card that I'm making for my husband. He's out for the day, and we've had a rough couple of days, and I've been not always the nicest wife. We've just had a lot of stuff going on, and it's really nothing to do with him. It's just I've been stressed. So anyway, I wanted to make him a card. And so I'm using this awesome kit by Digilicious Design from the February Digifiles. I just love this kit, just so much cool stuff in here. The colors, I love them. And I just know this is going to be one of those kits I'm going to use over and over and over again for all sorts of things. So I loved it and wanted to use it. So I've got my card here and my little corny phrase that I seriously just made up off the top of my head. It says, "I'm sorry I got so bent out of shape. I'd like to iron things out. Hardy har har." Okay, so I really like this card, except for it's got one problem. If we zoom in on this, you can see that this paper is really textured and it's got some folds in it. And I chose this paper specifically because of the whole corny joke about ironing things out and getting bent out of shape. So this was the perfect piece of paper for this card, and I love the texture. The problem is when I put this text on it, it is really just hovering over the paper. It doesn't really look real. Now I did just have plain colored text, and then I overlaid it with this pink paper from the kit, and that was definitely better because it gave a little texture to the letters, but still it doesn't look as if these letters were printed on the paper, and then the paper got bent, which is what the look I'm going for. I'm not going for a scrappy look, so I'm not trying to like put a drop shadow on it or anything like that. I want it to look like it was actually printed on the paper and then the paper got folded. But right now that's not the case. It just looks like it's hovering over there. And I especially want this to stand out because I purposely put this big phrase over the fold in the paper. So that's where a displacement map comes in. It's a way of distorting our letter so that it looks more realistic. So we need to back up a little bit. I'm going to go to a piece of paper that I used to make my card, and here it is. The full piece of paper was actually a piece of paper by Miss Tina, but you'll find in many of your digital kits that there will be highly textured, folded, crumpled paper that all can be used in this situation. Really, anytime you have a heavily textured paper, especially if it's got folds or wrinkles in it, and you're going to place text over that, and you're trying to create the look that the text was placed directly on the paper, like printed or stamped or anything like that, versus when you add a drop shadow and you're looking like you put a sticker over it, that text needs to look like it really was printed. So that would be a time that you would use this. So here's my piece of paper, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to create a whole second document to work with. So I'm going to go to File, Duplicate, and now I just have a new one. Now from this, we're going to use this piece of paper to create our displacement map to show Photoshop, or in my case Photoshop elements, but this also is the exact same way you would do it in Photoshop, to show them how to distort the layer. But I want to emphasize some of the texture a little bit more. So I'm first going to go up to Enhance, Adjust Lighting, and Levels, and I'm just going to darken this up a little bit and play with my levels just a little bit. And I might adjust, my contrast just a tad. And I'm really just doing this by eye. I didn't seem to take contrast. There we go. So I'm going to adjust my contrast. No, maybe I'll just leave it right where it was. Okay. So I adjusted my levels a little bit, darkened it up a little bit, and now I need to go to Image, Mode, and I need to change this to grayscale. And I have another layer in here. Let's get rid of that. Okay, I'm going to go to Image, Mode, Grayscale, and it's going to warn me that and ask me if I want to discard my color information. And I'm going to say okay because I made a duplicate. My original paper is not affected. Okay, so this is now in grayscale mode, and now I need to save this. And I'm going to do a Save As. And I'm just going to call this Displacement Map. You can call it whatever you want. And but you do need to be careful that you don't save this as a JPEG. We need to save this as a Photoshop file, a PSD file, even though there's no layers, which is typically what we think of with PSD files. But for this technique, you need to save it as a PSD file. So I'm going to save it. Okay. And now I'm going to go back to my original piece of paper, and I've got my text here that I had. And as you can see, it's just kind of floating over there. And like I said, I covered it up with this pink paper. So I'm just going to use a clipping mask. Command G in Photoshop Elements or Control G. It's Option Command G if you're in full Photoshop. So I was pleased with my text. I wasn't going to alter it, so because now I lost my text layer, but we have to do that anyway. So I've got this, and then I'm actually going to pull this other line out. This one's not as important because it's not a thick font that's you're really going to see, but we can add some realism anyway. I'm going to put this over this. And just going to scale up a little bit. Oops. Okay, so once I have everything right where I want it, I'm going to combine these layers because I need to have a simplified layer. This can't be a text layer. In Photoshop Elements, you would say, here I'll show you. I would go to Simplify Layer to get rid of that text, or it simplifies automatically when I merge these. In Photoshop, you can go to, you can rasterize your layer. Okay, so I've got this placed right where I want it. Now what I'm going to do, with this layer highlighted, I'm going to go to Filter, Distort, Displace. So here's my dialog box, and I am just going to keep the settings as they are. Horizontal scale 10, vertical scale 10, the displacement map I want to stretch to fit, and I want to repeat edge pixels. So I'm just going to click OK. And now it's going to bring up my Finder window to have me choose my displacement map. And that's where we're going to use that file that we just saved called displacement map, that PSD file. And I click on that and click Open. Now, if we zoom in here, it's looking a little funky, but you can see that the text is all distorted a little bit. So it's working. It applied that filter. And now I'm going to go to, I'm going to change my blending mode. Now which blending mode works best really depends on your background color, your text, and so forth. For this one, I believe, nope, not color burn. I'm going to use a linear burn. That one I think does the best for this one. And I'm going to lower my opacity just a tad. And I'm going to let you zoom. I'm going to zoom in here. And you can see how my text now has all gotten bent with the texture of the paper. It's like the ink really went on this piece of paper and then it got crumpled. And so, like I said, you can try other blending modes. Really depends on what you're working on. See, the screen's not going to work because I've got a white background, but if I had a different color background, that might be a good choice. Overlay sometimes will work. If you use overlay, you often will have to duplicate your layer to help the effect. But on this one, with the color text that I have and the white paper behind it, I'm going to use the linear burn. So I'm happy with that, and you can see that I've got all the texture of that. So now I'm just going to drag this layer onto my card. Oops. I need to put it right here above my paper again. And let's get rid of this other stuff that I'm not using anymore. And I want to line up where it was that I took it from the other file. Normally I would just do this right over the file I was working on, but since I was showing you guys, I wanted to start with a blank slate. So I have to be careful that, see where this is kind of distorted more? I can tell that that was right over the fold. So now I've got a much more realistic, and it plays a lot more into my corny card. So I used a piece of background paper from this kit. I love this. It's so pretty. I added some stitching from the kit, and I added some paint splatters. It's kind of hard to see them here. I'll give you a blank white background so you can see these. Well, not white. Anyway, you can see a gray background. You can see the paint splatters. So I added those to the card. And I just added them to the white part. I deleted them off of everything else. And actually, I may delete a little bit more because I don't really want them in here. I don't want them over my letters. All right, and then I would just save it and I'm done. I'll show you one another example and another corny joke since I was on all this crumbled stuff. Here's a really highly crumbled piece of paper, and I put on a silly little thing that says, even though we feel like a crumpled mess, there's no one else I would rather iron things out with. So it's really corny, but there's so many uses for this technique, especially those of you who are creating scrapbook pages that are trying to emulate paper pages. And this just adds an extra touch of realism to your layouts. And it's so super simple that there's no reason that we shouldn't try it. So I hope that was informative. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment on this post. And you can also always email me or drop me a line on Facebook or wherever you want to find me. And I'd be happy to help. I'm not an expert on this. It's just one of those things that I think it's just a cool technique. I actually learned this back when I first started scrapping almost 11 years ago. And then for many, many years, I forgot all about it and forgot how to do it. And so I'm glad that I've relearned how to do it so I can add some cool realism to my pages. All right, have a great day.